ready? All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can we please say the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morvay?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver? Yes. And Mr. Tisch?
Here. At this time, I would like to have a motion made pursuant to Section 2.04 of the Rules of Council to change the order of business tonight and move new business item B up to this point in the meeting.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morvay?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver? Yes. And Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
So item B, the item we're considering now, is a motion to appoint an individual to the position of President of Council. Would someone like to make a motion to appoint an individual as President of Council?
Mr. Morvay?
There's a motion. Second.
You said a motion?
Mr. Morvay?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morvay?
Yes.
Mr. Neff? You can abstain. Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver? Yes. And Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Well, those are my duties tonight. Mr. Morvay, you're up.
Okay.
Or should I say Mr. President?
Mr. Duffett and I are going to switch seats here. I was comfortable here, but congratulations. Thank you.
Name tag.
Is this yours?
There we go.
Notebook? Thanks.
There you go.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to amend the agenda this evening by way of removing item E.
Okay. Item E is a motion setting a public hearing for this proposed Millennial Moments Joint Economic Development District Agreement between the City of Canfield and the Canfield Township. I understand that this is simply a motion to set a public hearing on this. Why would we not want to, excuse me, first of all, you made a motion, so I got to get a second, right? Somebody want to second his motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we can have discussion now.
My concern is that I would like to have a motion that council is presenting that we can agree to. And from reading the motion that's on the agenda, I have some concerns with some of the content of that motion, and therefore I do not want to set a public hearing on the motion until there is a motion presented, at least that I can agree to. Now, if the majority members of council want to initiate a different motion or want to put that on, then that's your criteria. But my view is that I do not want to establish the public hearing until I have a motion before me that I would be in favor of.
But can I ask a question? When you're saying until you have a motion in front of you, you mean an agreement?
The agreement, yes,
The agreement
sir.
itself. Okay, so tonight it's just a motion to put the agreement before the public, receive public comments, consider those comments, have a public hearing, and display this agreement for the members of the community to review. You're not taking any action on the agreement itself tonight. You're simply placing it on the agenda, setting a public hearing for the community and you as well to consider the agreement itself. So after the amount of work that's gone into this, I would certainly, I don't vote, but I think it merits at least setting a public hearing and moving forward with that.
Because this agreement is a draft, correct?
Well, it's not really a draft. I mean, there are a couple of minor, substantive, minute non-substantive changes that we have to tweak. So I would say it's pretty complete agreement. Now, whether you agree with the terms of it or not is another matter entirely. Tonight, it's just to set it for a public hearing and move this forward.
Joe?
Yeah, and just reiterating Mark's comments, having negotiated this over a course of probably the better part of 6 months, maybe even longer than that, there's been a lot of modifications, changes. There's been a lot of disagreement and agreement on both sides of the table. And, you know, I can sit here as well and say that we don't agree with 100%, but we did come to a consensus that we can live with some of the agreement that we aren't 100% satisfied with. I would like to, again, go forward with having the public take a look at it and see what their opinion is and be able to act on this so that we don't delay this thing any longer than we can.
I guess the point is once we review this with the public, it can be changed.
Oh, correct, and you could decide not to pass, you could also decide you're not going to vote for it. This is a procedural step only tonight,
Right.
but it's a required step, and one that we assured the township and the developer, frankly, who's been more than patient, that we would put on the agenda and move forward tonight. Again, we're not taking action on the agreement itself.
Correct. So I have a motion. The motion is to remove item E, and there was a second, and there's been discussion. Is there any other discussion? Patty, can I call a vote, please?
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morvay?
No.
Mr. Neff?
No.
Mrs. Oliver?
No.
Mr. Tisch?
No.
So that's 4 no's to remove
To
it,
remove
so that it's not removed.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess this is still this caucus session of the council. We have 4 items this evening under new business. I would request that these items have 1 reading, if that's okay with council. Hearing no objections, we'll go with that. Mr. Tisch, could you do item A for me? Mr. Neff, C. Ms. Oliver, D. And Mayor, could you do E? Okay, if there's no other recommended changes or additions to the agenda this evening, we can proceed. I call this January 3rd, 2018 council meeting to order. And we've already did the roll call, the pledge, so we're beyond that. We've all received minutes from the last meeting. And at this time, I'm asking for any revisions or corrections.
Right, now to go for that.
If hearing none, they'll stand as they're written. Reading communications, Mr. Tisch.
I have none.
Mr. Neff.
I have none.
Mayor.
I have none.
Mrs. Oliver.
And none.
I've got a couple items here I'd like to just bring up, if I could, please. Mike, Mr. Cook, dumpsters, are they to be enclosed businesses?
Up
with
to certain
dumpsters?
sizes.
Up to a certain size. Okay. Yeah, so I'll check with you to see what size. And Chief, is it a criminal offense to throw your trash into a business?
Yes, there is a city ordinance forbidding that.
Okay. Okay, across from my office, Home Savings has a dumpster.
Okay.
And one of the neighbors has been watching people dumping trash into their container, which is not enclosed. It's not an enclosed structure. So it's open and they're throwing trash away in there. So I'm gonna check with Mike and see the requirements. Maybe if they just put a barrier or something around it. Maybe it should have a barrier around it, I don't know. But, or maybe we can pay attention to that.
Before our ordinance.
Your guys go by there.
Absolutely.
Mr. President?
Yes.
That issue came up quite a few years ago, and we looked into it at that time, and the home savings and loan was in existence prior to when we added the amendment to our ordinance, which provided for a barrier around the dumpster, and that's how they were basically grandfathered in.
I see.
And they're not required at this time to have a barrier there.
I see.
However, we had that same problem, and that's how it came up, and we needed that one, and there was one behind the little plaza across the green that had a similar situation. It's kind of obscured, and people were using it as their own private dumpster.
I'm just wondering if Home Savings and Loan's aware of people abusing their dumpster there. Maybe if they may want to put a barrier around it.
Yeah, they may have security that they
Yeah.
can monitor that. Yeah, we could contact them.
Check it out. Okay. One of the, when I was campaigning and every so often, people will come up to me and ask me, why the city doesn't have a community center. Well, we cannot spend public funds on a community center, is the whole gist of it. But one of the things that we could look at is like what they've done down in Salem. Somebody that has a foundation wants to make a donation, maybe give us a good start, or some kind of a small community center. I think it would be a great idea. I mean, because again, if we can keep our people here in Canfield in a community center, and that creates closeness, I guess, with one another, a feeling of hometown and all that. I would be in favor of it, but we cannot do it through public money. No, we just can't do it. So it would have to come from private donations, developer, whatever. So that was brought up to me.
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to mention that it has been brought up, perhaps a community center could be a joint initiative from the township and city. Back many years ago, a decade ago, we did visioning for Canfield, and the community center was one of the main, if not the main issue or the main topic that the community brought up, was that we'd love to have a community center. So it's very costly. The Salem Community Center was millions of dollars, but I would say that in a few months maybe we could look into forming a committee, and that might be under Parks and Rec, could approach the township and see whether we couldn't do something jointly to develop a district. But I say that without much experience and being new, as an idea, and we'll see what we can go with it. But I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah. Mr. Tisch.
In the 1970s, there was a joint economic development committee established between the between the township and the city. There were some funds raised. I think that they were doing some programs actually in the middle school, and so that was an existing facility. I think that if in fact the communities would want to explore something like that, a joint recreation district similar to what the joint fire district is could be established. You could actually place a levy on the ballot that would be a real estate tax levy to generate funds both for the capital acquisition as well as the operation and maintenance. So I think that there are some avenues to do that if you want to take a look at those. Might be a project for our new manager to take a look at.
It just seems like it's an important piece for people, because I always get comments on it, why don't we have a community center? And maybe perhaps we should look at that. So one of the things that we can look at. Okay, if there's no other communications, at this time, reports of committees, board, city manager, finance director.
Mr. President, I had two pieces of communication.
I'm sorry, Joe.
And I did receive a letter from Joe Cicero expressing an interest to serve on the Income Tax Review Board, and we do have one vacancy on that board. And also, I don't know if you've each received a copy of the invitation from the Canfield Local School Board of Education. They're having their second annual Cardinal Chili Cook-Off, and we're inviting officials and members of the community to bring in a roaster of their best chili and compete with the other members of the community. If you haven't found a copy, and if you're interested, you certainly don't want to taste my chili, but if any of you are interested and you don't have a copy of this, I'll be glad to make a copy and provide it to you. Those are the only two pieces of correspondence.
All right, thank you, Joe. At this time, reports of committees, board, city manager, finance director, chief of police, zoning inspector, and public works foreman. Mr. Tisch.
I think that all the members of council received the most recent minutes of the Park Recreation Cemetery Board. So I would just refer you to those for the report from the Parks Committee.
Mr. Duff, you would not have anything at this time. Mr. Mayor, you would not have anything. Mrs. Oliver, you would not have anything at this time. The fire district, of course, you saw the other day fought a horrendous fire in the township. I'm glad to say that there was no injuries or fatalities, and our fire department, although it was a total loss, did the best they could to contain the fire. It just developed and enveloped rather quickly. So just good to know that no lives were wasted in that fire.
John, I think that fire also points out an extremely important item at this time of year in particular: smoke detectors. Those folks got out of that fire because of smoke detectors.
Yeah, that's absolutely good point. Good point. Joe?
Okay. Yeah, we have 5 items on the agenda, 5 pieces of legislation to be addressed. The first, one of them of which has been addressed, and that was the appointment of our President of Council. The next item would be item A, an ordinance amending ordinance 1973-.44, rezoning lot 2000 on West Main Street from O Office District to B2 in general commercial. And basically this ordinance would be a first reading, and it's the old Dollar Bank building that's next to the Ford dealership near Cardinal and 224. We're looking at using it as a coffee shop and using the drive-through of the coffee shop, for the coffee shop. The current zoning does not allow for a drive-through. It would have to be changed to B2 to be able to accommodate the usage for the structure. And it's only the front portion of the property that's being rezoned to the B2. The request. Again, we would just do a first reading, and then we'd have to set a public hearing for this particular legislation. The next being item C, a motion nominating individuals to boards and commissions. And this is done annually to keep all of our city boards and commissions active. And we have a number of vacancies. Through our charter, there's a requirement that council members sit on the Planning and Zoning, Design Review, and Park and Rec Committee. And there is a vacancy currently on the Planning and Zoning Commission, Design Review Commission. Chuck, I believe you've agreed to stay on the Park and Rec Commission.
I will serve at whatever position council would like me to serve at.
Okay. There's a opening on the Income Tax Review Board. And John, I believe you've expressed an interest in the last few meetings about staying on the Cardinal Joint Fire District Board, so that we can close that. And
Mr. Joe Cicero expressed interest in the income tax review.
Yes, that was the letter that I received and mentioned earlier.
And Mike Clayton has also indicated an interest to serve again on the fire district.
Fire district.
And the JED board, that was established back in 2015. This is for the current JED, the one out at the Windsor House. The way the agreement is set up is there's a one-year term of startup. Mayor Kosar was assigned as the appointment for that one-year term, which that term expired on December 16th of 2016. He was then reappointed to a four-year term from 12/16/16 for 4 years. He's agreed to stay on that board if you so wish, or if someone else wishes to take his place on that board, whatever your desire is. But again, he has expressed an interest to stay on, and it would be for the unexpired term of 2 years and 11 months to finish that first term out. So we can address that at the time that you're hit that motion, or do that now if you want to fill in some of those voids, but we do need to get that taken care of because they will be starting to meet the first of the year, and we don't want to have a lack of a quorum.
Yeah, and I know design review, planning and zoning, both Christine Oliver and Bruce Knapp have expressed interest in being on that planning and zoning, but I also need somebody on the design review committee. And I'm going to take this liberty, Mr. Neff, I thought perhaps with your background with the Historical Society, you could lend some expertise in the design review committee.
I'd be happy to do that. I actually asked Chuck whether he could shuffle to design review, because I'd still like to throw my hat into the zoning and planning. It's a really critical time with what's going on. So do we really have to go through these tonight? Might be good for us to.
We usually do.
Well, it would be best. We have meetings coming up. Some of those meetings, require.
Yeah, there was one today. Wasn't there a meeting?
There could have been a design review meeting this week. Yeah, planning and zoning is next Thursday. Yeah, I'd rather have them constituted tonight if we can.
Okay.
Yeah, if we could.
If I may, I expressed the interest in the Planning and Zoning Commission because I've had past experiences working with Mike Cook on some zoning issues, and I have developed some knowledge around that. I have done a lot of research on it, so I'd be very interested in doing that.
And Mr. Neff, you were saying Chuck was, I'm a little confused.
Well, I had indicated that I'm more than willing to change boards. You know, I've served on the Parks Recreation Cemetery Board, but I would serve on whatever board members of council would like me to serve on.
Okay. Can we argue amongst friends? Try to come up with a consensus here. Bruce, would you be willing to serve on the Design and Review Committee if I asked Christine for the planning and zoning? Would that be an issue? Or?
Well, I think it is an issue since I would like to be on the zoning, planning and zoning. Okay. I have, but
Mrs. Alder, would you have an issue going to the design and review?
I would do where you feel that I'm best served, but when I found out that Bruce was involved with the Historical Society, I felt that that was a really good fit from what I was reading in my research.
Well, and here's the thing, my thoughts with this design review committee. I need somebody on there that will drive standards and write standards for that committee. We have none right now. So it's all subjective. When you go to that design and review committee, it's a subjective decision that they make. I would rather there be concrete standards written as to what we're looking for. So this is an important piece, I feel, going forward. So,
I completely agree. That's why I asked Chuck if he would be willing to do design review, since he's in the historical district as well, and is actually my senior. I need to represent Chuck.
yeah.
And again, very important for planning. So, John, you're going to have to make your first call.
Well, you're gonna vote, Jack, you can vote on it,
Yeah. Okay,
but I wouldn't do that until you get to that motion.
okay, all right, well then let's move on then, since you really can't have a consensus.
All right, and then the last order of business would be there's two more. The item D would be a motion naming the police chief and finance director as acting city manager in the absence of the city manager. And this is done on an annual basis, and this would only be in the absence of the city manager. If he's off on sick leave, vacation, out of the state at a conference, then Mr. Colucci would serve as city manager. If he's on vacation at that time, it would be the finance director, Christine. And it's worked out very well in the past over the 8 years that I've served as city manager, and I recommended doing the same thing, and Wade was in agreement with sticking with the same protocol. So we can have motion on that as well. And item E was previously discussed. That's a motion setting a public hearing on the proposed Millennium Moments Joint Economic Development District agreement between the City of Canfield and Canfield Township. And just again reiterating my comments previously that we sat down as representatives of the city, and I believe we negotiated in good faith. And like any negotiation, there's things on both sides of the table that there's a give and take. There's some things in there that I particularly was not in favor of, but in the sake of moving this forward and hearing what the community has to say about it, I'd like to see it put out there, and hopefully we get some input from the community. And all we're asking this evening is that we set a public hearing. I believe that would be in February, because it has to be 30 days out, and not delay the process or the progress of this development at this point. So I hope we can act on that this evening. The one other comment I did want to mention, and I think I've mentioned it to a number of the new members of council as well as the senior members, that just what we're dealing with today with the committees. It's not easy. We put notices out, we put things on our webpage, try to get volunteers from the community to serve on these committees, and it's very difficult getting people to want to take that responsibility and be on these committees. One of the other problems we have is that the terms of the committees are 3-year terms in most cases. A couple of them are 2-year terms. But when you name a council member to a committee with a 3-year term, and his council term is only 2 years, we're going to be facing this problem on a reoccurring basis every 2 years. I urge council to take immediate action the first of the year to revisit the issue of the term limits. Okay, if you want to maintain a longevity, if they serve 2 terms or whatever it may be, but let's get back to a 4-year term with staggering terms, so we have some longevity in council where 2 people at least remain on along with the mayor, and 2 people are elected each year, and there's some continuity, and it would coincide with the rest of the charter and some of these committees. And I would hope that we take action on that as early as we can, so that possibly we're on the May ballot for at least that one charter amendment. And lost my train of thought. We also have a obligation to establish a charter review committee this year. We're into our 5th year cycle, so that can be done as well. That's going to take some time to get volunteers to get on that committee. So you could either wait, which I don't recommend doing. I'd rather council take the action, get it out in front of the voters, or assign a charter review committee, and the earliest you're probably going to get it on the agenda would be in November. So those are other things. If you have friends or people out in the community, get the word out that you're going to need people to step up to be on that committee as well. Okay. And Again, I want to introduce our new city manager, Wade Calhoun. I took the responsibility of handling today's meeting so that he can kind of get a feel as to how things are being done and conducted, and whether he wants to continue along the same program or change things would be certainly up to Wade. I've been able to spend 2 days with him. I feel very confident that the city's going to be in great hands and great leadership with Wade. He's taken the ball and has run with it, and I think we're going to be in really good shape here. So, I don't know, Wade, if you want to comment.
To Mayor and Council, again, and Search Committee, just excited to be back home in Canfield. Excited to work with the new Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity that's been given to me, and I feel I kind of bring as President Morvay reiterated at the beginning of the swearing in. I've got an energy and a passion for local government, and I think that's going to show in a lot of the things that I do day to day, and then some of the bigger goals that we will set with the city of Canfield. And just to the residents, I have staff, I have an open door policy, so phone calls, emails, I'm more than welcome. Again, I'm a part of this community. Residency, not yet. I'm working on that. So again, I have a vested interest. I'm a member of the community. I look forward to meeting everybody that I can, and working with boards and commissions and this mayor and council as well. So again, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad to be here.
As we were, Wade and I were discussing one day, we had a lot of friends that in common, we were talking about that 7 degree of separation. I says in Canfield it's like 2. We found out that the same person, my hairdresser, was also his when he was a young boy. So we're bringing back a hometown boy, and we're really excited about it. So thanks, Wade.
On that same note, John, an interesting piece of history when I took on the responsibility of being city manager, city engineer at the time. I gave Chuck my contact information, and it was my personal phone number at home. And he looked at me with this odd look, and I said, well, what's wrong? It was the phone number that the bakery maintained while they were in existence. And we wondered why at home we were getting all these orders for pies. It's a small world. It's a small world. Christine, did you want to give a report?
Yesterday we also had a new utility billing clerk start, and I'm working with her, getting her trained. She's doing very well. And I'll be starting to work to close out 2017. The first amended certificate of resources is due to Mahoning County Auditor on January 20th, and I need the year-end balances as beginning balances for that to go forward.
For the month of December, we issued 4 permits for a total of $47,304 valuation. This coming year, we're going to be addressing political signs in discussion as far as placement goes. We can't dictate how soon or how many you can put up, but I'd like to get our right-of-way specified where we can put them, so many feet off the street. So we're adjusting that with planning and bringing it back to council for some suggestions.
Okay, Mark?
I don't really have a report tonight, other than to say we worked really hard on the JED process, the annexation process, and the JED agreement is only one part of the whole package here. The other shoe that drops is the annexation agreement, and that's probably more important to the city. I don't think you accomplish one without the other, but again, I don't vote. The other issue, as Mike said, we have to straighten out the political sign stuff, and we're going to start working on that real soon. And we did take a look at I think Chuck, and this is the best part about Chuck being around, you had that information on that grant from Fair Park.
Yeah.
And we took a look at that. Mike gave me copies of that, and we're not allowed to use that land for anything other than public recreational purposes. So Chuck is this giant well of information for all of us. So that's it.
Chief?
For the most part, we had a safe, calm holiday, a few weeks over the holidays. No major issues. And just to give you a snapshot of 2017 from a police perspective, and this certainly doesn't represent our entire body of work, but from dispatch, we answered 19,853 calls in 2017. 13,267 were police, and the balance of 6,500 plus was fire, EMS, mayor's court calls, and other miscellaneous calls. So the dispatchers work hard day in and day out. They do an excellent job in processing 20,000 calls. It's a significant number. From the police side, in 2017, our officers made a total of 2,740 traffic stops. Of those traffic stops, 943 resulted in citations. We gave 1,797 warnings. And I will go ahead and say the warnings, we also look at it as an educational opportunity, maybe to make people aware of things they weren't otherwise aware of. Drug arrests, 103 drug arrests, and 44 OVI arrests. I do have more numbers that I'll share with you later in the month or early in February regarding house checks and radar zones, and without a question we'll give you our goals for 2018. There's a lot of anticipated goals that we have, and we're looking forward to accomplishing those.
Great.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I might add to Mr. Tisch brings a wealth of knowledge of this city. And when we were looking to hire Wade, my question to Mr. Tisch was, will you mentor him? Because I figured what he didn't have in experience and knowledge, that one did. We could blend those two together and we would be okay. And so thank you for
willing to help in every way I can.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, then I'll accept public questions from residents or representatives related to the above reference reports that were just given. Questions are limited to 3 minutes, please. Keep it brief. Anybody? Okay. Not. Then recognition of persons desiring to appear before council. And Jeannie Neville, please approach the podium. State your name and address, please, for the record.
I'm Jeannie Neville. I live right down the street from where the bakery was. I've been visiting the bakery. I'm from 41 Scott Street. My topic has to deal with Christmas display lights that are displayed in town. I'm here to request that before October of this year, this City Council formulates regulations limiting the display of holiday lights on private properties. These displays are very attractive, they're very entertaining to the public, but to those who live close by, they're irritating and very limiting to family life. The added traffic makes it difficult for you, for your friends, or your relatives, and any emergency vehicles to get to your house. And many times, it's very difficult to even get out of your own driveway. We in Canfield are very accustomed to extra traffic. We deal with the fair. And we tolerate it because it's only a few days. And we have other streets that we can go around to avoid it. We know the back ways. But for those living near an extensive light display, there is little escape. Some of these holiday lights begin in October for Halloween. They continue into November, one-person displays for Veterans Day, and then on through December for Christmas. That's 90-plus days of traffic and interference in your neighborhood. The goals of the regulations that I'm asking you to formulate are twofold. First, to ensure courtesy and respect for the neighboring residents to be able to carry on with normal family activities without serious interruption. And second, to maintain a traffic flow on the street. With this in mind, I have several suggestions, and I'm printing them out. And These are just suggestions after living with the problem. I have extras. First, you have to define what needs to be regulated, okay? So in defining it, we call them extensive holiday light displays. We don't want to say to everybody in Canfield, you can't put up Christmas lights. We just want to focus on those that are extensive. And so an extensive light display would be one that includes any one of the following elements: motion, music, manipulation. Any one of those three would be considered extensive. Motion is animated or moving characters or items. Music are sounds or music transmitted in any medium. Manipulation are any lights that are programmed to go on and off as part of a display. That would constitute the limitations that would, or the stipulations to define a extensive light display. Next, I'd like to see a permit issued, or a permit required for an extensive light display. Canfield already regulates garage sales. They have limits on the days, how many weekends you're allowed to have a garage sale. So I sort of modeled my regulations on what we already do for garage sales. First, a permit specifies the number of days the lights may be displayed. Right now, we have one display in town that goes October through December. It goes from October through December for the different holidays, like I said before. Number two, the permit should specify the hours each evening lights may be displayed. Right now, we have a Christmas display that the lights go on around dusk, depending 4:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30, on weeknights, and they go until 10 o'clock at night. On the weekends, same thing, 4:30, 5 o'clock, but it goes till 11 and sometimes midnight. Okay, that is 5 to 6 to 7 hours a night that the lights are being displayed on the street. Okay. 3, permit establishes a fee per property hosting an extensive light display. I mentioned this per property because we have one light display in town that covers 15 properties. The person displaying the lights has 4 properties, homeowners, to the north or to the south of him. He has 6 properties to the north of him where the lights are spread across. And then he also has his lights on other people's properties around the corner on 4 other houses. So if you're going to have a permit, each of the property owners should be required to obtain a permit for this. And I think a money fee should go along with it. They do this with the garage sales also. You have to pay a fee. Also, the permit should also hold the property owner displaying the lights responsible for payment to repair any damage to neighbors' lawns caused by cars viewing the light display. We have several yards that we don't have curbs. So if you drive up a few of our streets, you'll notice that there are tire marks because with all the traffic, the cars are off into the yards, regardless of whether people have the barriers up or not, the little lights that they use, or the markers. Okay, so those are some of the issues for creating a permit to, that I thought might be. Also, the next is controlling traffic. When these lights are on, you'll have hours of traffic back and forth. It was interesting, Christmas night, I picked up the kids and we went to church. To come back from church on Christmas night, they said, "Mom, just drop us off at the end of the street." To walk through the snow and the traffic, because there was so much traffic on the street, it was difficult to get them back to their house that night. And I didn't. I just, well, you probably already know, I plowed my way through the traffic. I'm one of those phone calls, or several of your phone calls.
Gee, if I could just interrupt.
Okay, sure.
We try to keep this brief.
Oh, okay.
So, we understand the issue, because this isn't the first time it's been brought up.
Oh,
And Jeannie's not been the first person to approach me with this issue. And, you know, what happened to just being respectful to one another, you know? And I don't know if the solution's an ordinance or whatever. I don't know that, but we're going to have to discuss that
okay,
as a
And we will.
team
right.
and try to get some resolve. Maybe
Okay.
it's just asking people to be respectful, I don't know. But for the sake of time,
Okay,
we
understand.
we get the
Yes,
message.
thank you for letting me speak and for facing the issue for us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jeannie, thank you. Okay. And I'm having a hard time, Nellie?
No.
Me, Frank.
Thank you.
Are you a doctor or what?
No, sir.
I want to just thank the council. Frank Immediate, senior pastor at Touch Heaven Church, and my wife is the co-pastor here that I lead. We're at 10 Skyline Drive, and I think you know that we took residence in the building, which was the Old North 6 years ago. Invested a lot of money, a lot of time, and we're a small church with a lot of committed people that work very hard. Very proud to be in the community. I want to start with our police department. I didn't intend to do that, but fantastic. And, you know, you take residents a lot in our parking lot. We appreciate it. And there's not a time if something goes off in that church, they're not on top of it in a matter of seconds. But what I want to bring to thank you about, my wife and I want to thank you about, is that on Thursday we came in and found our water frozen up. First time in 6 years. And we were scratching our heads a little bit trying to figure it out, so we called the city, and we were put into the city manager's office right away, and Mr. Moreno answered. And he said, well, we'll get somebody out there as fast as we can. 20 minutes later, Tony and Greg, I believe their names were, showed up. And they went right down into the basement with me. They analyzed it, they assessed it, they told us what they thought it was, and they went out and turned the water off. It was very cold. It took them a long time because it needed to be frozen. We did exactly what they told us to do, including thawing out slowly into things that they, by 6 o'clock at night, we had the problem under control, and the next morning, they were responsible enough to put us at the top of the list and check on us without us calling. And we were able to have church services, and the damage was minimal. And we just want to thank you. You know, we live in the best city that you could possibly live in the country, especially with the church. And I don't know anywhere where you could get that kind of attention on an urgency matter as fast as you were. Tony and Greg, I met Tony before because he put a meter in before, but Greg, they were extremely professional, extremely competent, cold, never complained, and got us back on board when we had services. So I just want to thank you. I know you probably get a lot of complaints, but we want to thank you. And we're so grateful to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear the positive stuff. We generally just, you'll learn, you council members, that we usually get the negative comments, so that's much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, under Anybody else? I don't have anybody else on my list, but if there's anybody else, if not, we'll move on. Old business, is there any old business to discuss this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on. New business. I have A, and we'll read that as per the provisions of section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield. I move to dispense with the requirements of 2 readings of the proposed ordinance and authorize adoption of the same upon its first reading.
Wait. I think all we want to do is read title only on this, because this is only going to be first reading.
First reading.
Oh, that's right. So title only.
Just read, yeah, for title only.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's fine.
As per the provisions of section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield, I move to dispense with the requirements of 2 readings of the proposed ordinance and authorize adoption of the same upon its first reading.
We don't adopt it at first reading.
We're not adopting it. We're just reading it by title only. That's all we're doing.
We're just reading it by title only.
Yeah, so find the motion that allows us to read by title only, Mr. President. Is it up there?
Oh, title. By title only. right?
That's all, we need a motion to read it by title only, that'll constitute first reading.
Okay, as per provisions of section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield, I move the council dispense with requirements of a full reading of the proposed ordinance, or motion.
It's an ordinance.
Ordinance.
Oh, it is an ordinance, yeah, ordinance, and authorize reading by title only.
Second.
It's my first day.
I second.
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes. Mr. President, I have an ordinance amending ordinance 1973-44, rezoning lot 2000 on West Main Street from O Office District to B2 General Commercial. This constitutes first reading. I think we will need to set a public hearing on this.
Yep.
Yeah.
I second.
Well, I need a date.
February 7th
Okay.
at 5 o'clock.
We'll just set that public hearing for February 7th at 9 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
I move we set the public hearing then for February 7th, 5 p.m.
Yep.
5 o'clock.
Do we need a second on that? Second? Second. Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Okay. And so then we move to item C, which is a motion, and that's going to be read as title only, correct? Council?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. No need for 2 readings on the motion.
Oh, yeah. You're going to... As per the provisions of section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield, I move the council dispense with the requirements of a full reading of the proposed motion and authorize reading by title only. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Oliver?
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion appointing an acting city manager and move for passage.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second by Mr. Tisch. Any discussion? Patty?
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
And Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
And that's 2018-2.
As per the provisions of section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield, I move the council dispense with the requirements of a full reading of the proposed motion and authorize reading by title only. Do I have a second? Second, Mr. Neff? Patty?
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
And Mr. Tisch?
Yes. Okay, now we need to fill in some blanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would introduce that the name of Bruce Neff to be member of Planning Commission.
This is all under you said you had expressed interest
Do we need a second?
I haven't expressed interest as well.
We have a motion, we have a second, am I allowed a second?
Anybody's allowed to second.
Yeah.
I second.
Okay. Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
No.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Passes.
Okay. Mrs. Oliver, do
Yes.
you prefer Parks and Rec or design review?
Design review, so that Mr. Tisch can stay in those spots.
Okay, so we have a nomination, Mrs. Oliver, to the Design and Review Committee.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Tisch. Do I have any discussion? Patty?
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver? Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch then will stay with the Parks and Recreation. We don't need a motion on that, correct?
No.
He's already on there. I'd like to make a recommendation that Joe LaCicero become a member of the Income Tax Review Board.
Is that motion?
Yes, it is.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Tisch.
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
And I have a motion that John Morvay remain on the Cardinal Joint Fire
Already
District.
there, it's already there,
Second's
already there.
Oh,
Yeah, it's already there.
oh, okay, we still
Yep.
don't have to, yeah, okay.
You just need to fill in that JED board
And
seat.
Mr. Clayton also, right?
Already there.
He's already there, okay. I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Bernie Kozar be a member of the JED board for the
Windsor House,
Windsor House JED,
for the remainder of the current term.
maybe the current term.
I second.
Second by Mr. Neff. Discussion, Patty?
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
And Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Okay, so then we need the motion read. Can you read D, please? Yeah. Mr. President, I have a motion making appointments of boards and we move for passage.
Mr. President, I have a motion making appointments to boards, commissions, and committees, and I move for passage.
Second. I have a motion, I have a second by Mr. Tisch. Discussion. Hearing none. Patty?
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
And Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
It's 2018-3.
I might add, when I ask for discussion, that also includes public comments. If you do have a comment about the particular ordinance, resolution, or motion that we're discussing at that time. Okay. As per provisions of section 4.05 of the Charter of the City of Canfield, I move the council dispense with the requirements of a full reading of the proposed motion and authorize reading by title only. And second by Mayor. Any discussion? Patty?
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morve?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
And Mr. Tisch?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, can you read these, please?
Mr. President, I have a motion setting a public hearing on the proposed Millennial Moments Joint Economic Development District Agreement between the City of Canfield and Canfield Township. I move for passage.
Second.
I have a motion, Mrs. Oliver seconded. Any discussion? Any public comments? Hearing none. We gotta set a date, right?
You gotta pass the motion first.
Pass the motion first.
Mr. Duffett?
Yes.
Mr. Morvay?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver?
Yes.
And Mr. Tisch?
No.
It's 2018-4.
Okay, and so the motion is carried. The date that we want to set that for is what?
The same date,
February
February 7th at 5 to 10.
At 5:10.
Well, the last one we set was
5 o'clock.
Is that gonna be enough time?
It's 20 minutes. You know, we could probably run over the 5:30 mark there a little bit, but since
I'm
we
talking
set,
about the public hearing.
yeah,
The first public hearing is 5 o'clock.
first one at 5, that'll be enough time on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
7 o'clock, February 7th, February 7th at 5:10.
There it is.
Got it. Okay, that concludes our new business. Council comments, Mr. Tisch.
Mr. Moreno alluded to the issues with regard to term limits, and all of those issues. I would like to reiterate that. I think we need to expeditiously move forward, taking a look at how we are going to address the length of terms and the term limit. And I'm not sure that I have a specific thought, but I think that they have to be minimum of 4-year terms, and I think they have to be staggered in some fashion or another for the terms so that we don't have everybody being reelected at the same time.
Great. Mr. Neff.
I would just like to thank everybody for coming tonight, and I hope we can get participation from the community, and we'll do a best job we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I also would like to thank everybody for coming, and it's good to be aboard. Thank you.
Mrs. Oliver.
I'd like to say Happy New Year and thank you for being here and thank you for your support. I look forward to working with all of you and what you want to see done in our beautiful city. Thank you.
Just to conclude, I have some comments that I'd like to make and challenges to throw out to our new city manager. First of all, Wade, could you put together an organizational chart for us? And so that, well, this is an old one, but so that maybe the new council members understand, you know, the organizational chart, who reports to who, and, you know, that sort of thing. We've had it in the past, and it's a nice thing to have. You get to know everybody in the city and what their functions are, and, you know, that type of thing. So going forward, we've started this strategic plan, and we've not yet completed it. We got a great start on it, and we got great input from the community. But I'd like to continue this, and it's going to take a separate meeting. Whether we were meeting in the mornings, I think 5 or 5:30 in the morning, and but that was when we could get together, and we accomplished a lot with that. I'd like to see us with a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year plan going forward, so that when and if we are not here in 2 years, that there's some kind of continuation, that there's a path to run on. I'd like to see Chief with our vehicles and our maintenance of our equipment, the city, police, that there's some kind of a schedule for replacement and repair and capital improvements. I'd like to see that in a 10-year plan. I think one of the issues that we have in the city right now is what do we do to tighten up our property management issues that we've been having. And we asked Wade this question in his interview, and he had some great responses to it. And it's not beating people down, but if somebody's truly having a hardship, we're certainly going to try to work with them. But I'll be honest with you, we've been played like a fiddle with a couple of people in this town, and it's about time that stops. We need to tighten up that And Wade, I'm sure we're going to come up with some solutions to do that. In your interview, Wade, you had some ideas about communicating. Blackboard, sort of like an electronic communications board with the community. And that, I mean, some of the ideas that I took from you that night are invaluable, because I think that's how you communicate with the young people today. They don't pick up the phone anymore, they don't come to public meetings, but they're in tune to these new electronic message boards and communicating that way. So I'd like to see us move toward those goals and communicating to our public. One of my pet peeves is here also, Wade, is what visions do we have for our future, our community? What infrastructure do we need here in Canfield that our young people do not have to move away from this area? I had 3 daughters, they're all out of state because that's where they can find work and work for the kind of wages that they do. I've got a daughter in Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Cleveland. There's got to be some infrastructure, especially going forward in this day and age of communications and technology, that we're going to be able to live here and work somewhere else. And so I'd like to work on that infrastructure. What do we need to keep our young people here, like getting Wade back from Texas? You know, that's what we got to work on. Redgate, been a sore subject. Redgate's an asset, guys. I don't know how, whatever way you slice it, we don't have any more room to expand in Canfield, but we have Redgate. And that's going to be one of our best assets that we've ever encountered here in town. So I know there's annexation on the table, and we got to get this done. We got to get that annexed. We've got to get commerce in here. We've got to get some industries in here to help support the income tax. And so those are my goals, Wade. I took the money out. And I'll be working and sitting down with you, you know, trying to accomplish these things. I've got 2 years to do it. So, Wade, do you have any comments?
No, I look forward to discussions. Again, I think they're good goals. Again, the strategic plan being major impact for any new member of council. It gives staff that guiding document that gives us that plan going forward, and it takes some of the burden off of us and guessing what y'all want, what the community wants. So I think, again, like I've talked about, communication being a huge part of that. So I look forward to it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Wade. Okay, with that, we are adjourned.
Yes, sir.